Hey guys, welcome to the Melanin Matter. This week we're going to be talking about our personal experiences growing up as women of colour in the three different countries that we were born in and in. So to kick off, I'm going to start, and I'm Becca. I grew up and I was born in South London. And so yeah, I grew up and I was born in South London along with my sister. So we've all literally lived here our whole lives. And to be honest, I've been quite lucky because I find London is quite diverse. So I've been able to go up around like lots of different cultures and see people that look like me, men and women that look like me, which I think matters a lot, especially when you're young and you just need that representation. So it hasn't been too bad. Obviously, it kind of, as you get older and you experience these things and you travel around, you get different experiences. But I'd say my childhood growing up in South London it wasn't bad at all actually. Yeah, overall not too bad.
I'm Scout. I grew up in Sweden for most of my life. I was born there, and then after a few months or so, we moved to Belgium, and I don't really remember anything from that time, but my childhood in Sweden, I would say, was pretty good. I grew up in a pretty nice city, and it's not like Gothenburg or like Sweden overall is not that diverse, but I went to an English school, so I did see a little more people from different cultures and different backgrounds. So I had a little more representation speaking like that way, but otherwise not really. And after that, when I was 16, I moved to Canada, and that was when I definitely noticed how Canada is just like way more diverse than Sweden, because there is literally no diversity at all here compared to over there. So that was like a big shock for me. But yeah.
Hey, this is Natalia, and in terms of my experience growing up, I was born in Hong Kong, but then when my brother was born, that was like a year and a half later, we moved to New York for a couple of years. I was a baby, so I don't remember anything from that time. But after that, we went to Tokyo, and that's where I spent the majority of my childhood, around like 5 years there. So that was from the ages of, I want to say, like around 5 all the way until I was like 8 or 9. So in Tokyo, I would say that my childhood was pretty good. Like, I didn't have any sort of like issues like racially, I want to say. Like, I was in the international school, and although it wasn't that diverse, I never really felt different in any ways, and I never really noticed that I was different to other people. So I think in that aspect it was pretty good. They kind of have that mentality of like, always love like everyone, like it's that sort of mentality, I guess, because it was like a pretty American school. So I don't know, I would say that my childhood was pretty good. But after that, as when I moved to Hong Kong, and I would say that's when I kind of like realized a little bit more that I was different compared to other people, because it was even less diverse, but also I felt like I had a lot more troubles for very simple things I never had troubles for before, like making friends and stuff like that. And a lot of like racially charged words, energy, slightly teasing slash bullying, if I want to say. But yeah, definitely a lot of a different experience compared to Tokyo, and I remember feeling that at that time. But I think now the next like topic would be like our schools and our school environment growing up. And I would say that for me, especially when I was in primary, I would say it kind of like, I had quite a few instances where people would just kind of say not really nice things. Like, I don't really know how else to put it. It was like kind of racist. Like, I think I had one guy like consistently call me the African like the entire year, and I would keep correcting him and telling him like I'm not African, and he would keep saying it anyways. And so like at that time, I didn't see like a huge problem with it, because my way, or I guess form of retaliation, was just calling him Gaulois, which is basically like, Gaul is like the old France, and I guess like it's kind of to say like a barbaric person, I guess, but not really. It just means that they're from the old France in some ways. But I thought that that was like a good enough equivalent, because Africa would have been like where all black people originated. So my like reasoning to counteract that was to say that he was a Gaulois and therefore from the old France. So I don't know. As a kid, I wasn't really aware, I guess, of how these were problems or issues, but that was definitely one thing I noticed. Another thing was another kid calling me Nutella. And at the time, I was just like, oh, well, it's just because my name's Natalia, and I guess it's like similar, but at the same time, like, it's obviously not right for you to kind of make nicknames based on someone's appearance, I would say. But that was like approximately, I don't know, I feel like, especially for the younger years, because we had like primary, I guess, and secondary. For primary, I definitely felt like I had a lot of troubles making friends when I felt like I never had that issue in Tokyo, and I couldn't really put the finger on why at the time. But I first started out in like the French section of the Hong Kong International School, and then went into the international, like the bilingual section, and that was a lot better, I found. But I don't know, it kind of stemmed, and then it was kind of weird phase. I don't know, I guess kids are just kids at that point. But in secondary, I would say it kind of turned more into like teasing, and like, to give context, in Hong Kong, you don't really have any diversity. I think there were only 2 Black people, including myself, for the entire year. So to give perspective, like, there really wasn't a lot of diversity, and there would be a lot of teasing growing up, especially about the fact that I was Black. And on several occasions, there were just people who would say things that were insensitive and then not understand why it was wrong. And there were even instances of people saying the N-word and not understanding why that was wrong. And like, a lot of people asking for like the N-word pass and stuff like that. So I think that section of my life was definitely a part where I was kind of more normalized about racial issues, I would say. I don't know, like, what experiences did you guys have, like, in comparison? Because I feel like that was kind of my experience growing up.
No, I completely agree, especially on the primary school side. Surprisingly, like, looking back on it, I actually realised some of the incidents that happened in primary school were kind of racially charged as well, even though considering we were so young. But yeah, I went to like a quite I was like, I don't know, about 3 Black people in my entire year at my primary school. So it wasn't really diverse, even though I did mention before that I lived in a very diverse area. The place I went to primary school wasn't very diverse. And I think, looking back on it, I think that representation and having people that kind of look like you really does matter. Not saying that, you can't put yourself into like situations where you're going to be like the ethnic minority, because that's completely fine. Like, at the end of the day, we are all human. But I think it is also quite important from a young age to have like a teacher or someone that, or like classmates that kind of look like you, because I don't think we had any people of color as teachers, even, or even people in like in higher positions.
Yeah, that's so true. I
So
didn't have I didn't have like a single
yeah,
Black teacher. No joke.
Yeah,
I
literally.
yeah,
think of a single one. So it's like, it's
honestly,
crazy to think of that. Like,
yeah,
I never saw it from that point of view, but if you do think of it that way, yeah, it's crazy. I think I had one teacher that was from La Réunion, but then he was like very much light skinned, and very much, he didn't look like the representation of what Black would be, I guess. Like, because I think he was mixed as well. So apart from him, I can't think of a single teacher that was Black, and that's kind of crazy in my opinion.
Yeah,
yeah.
literally.
No, I think for my classmates, I probably might not have been, but I feel like I was like the token like Black person, I guess. So I do remember like having comments made about my features that didn't look like theirs, because obviously like my typical Black features. I remember people making
Tell me
comments
about
about
it.
that. I don't know, I guess just like a bit of an identity crisis, because when you don't look like any of your friends,
No, yeah, I
don't look like any
agree.
of your people, and they're kind of picking on the points that don't look like the specific features that don't look like them, it's like, yeah, it's hard.
No, yeah, I can totally relate to that, being that, like, having that little bit of a questioning your identity, like being everyone's token Black friend. Like, I remember when in like primary school, elementary school, I wasn't really aware about it, because like I had a few people of color in my class, and it was like the majority of the people were white. And I also went to an English school, so that was considered diverse for being Sweden, which isn't very diverse at all. Like, I can only like imagine my other friends who went to like complete Swedish schools, like looking through their yearbooks and stuff. Literally everybody's like white, blonde, like everybody looks the same.
Yeah.
And that was like, my mom would tell me that I would come home some days and just be like, why don't I have blonde straight hair? Why don't I have blue eyes? And then she would like try and explain that to me, but I wasn't aware that like I was different in that way. I realized it more when I got older, and people would like say the craziest stuff to me. They would be like, oh, I'm literally blacker than you, or like, I
Wow.
listen to rap, so I'm probably blacker to you. Like, you don't even listen to Beyonce. Like, it was just like the craziest
Oh
stuff
my
that I couldn't wrap my head around. I was like, that doesn't even have anything to do with it. Like, why are you telling me this when you're not even actually black? Like,
Wow.
it's the weirdest thing ever. And literally, my first day of high school, so it's in like after grade 9, you finish like middle school, I guess, here, and then grade 10, you start high school. And I didn't know anybody at my high school, but one of the first things that a girl said to me was, so do you consider yourself white or black? And literally right there, like I will never forget, I was just like, what? Like what? Is that even like I was so like
What about
thrown
both?
off. I exactly like, do I have to choose? But then it's like, it was so weird because that was like the first time me realizing like, oh, like people actually think about this stuff and this is like super prominent in our societies, but I haven't really realized it until now. And when I went to Canada for grade 11 and grade 12, I just met so many more people who look like me, a lot of other people of color. And it was a whole new experience. Like I was looking back at my time in Sweden and realizing so many things that were said to me or that I had experienced or kind of just let like pass by me as if it was nothing actually like held a lot of meaning.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when I like
Yeah.
realized a lot.
I think for me, at least, growing up in Hong Kong and not having like any representation, kind of took a huge toll on like my confidence. I think there was definitely a time where I was like 12 where I was with a friend and we were, I don't know, like playing dress up or something for like a photo shoot or whatever. And I just looked in the mirror and I was thinking like, why can't I be white? You know, and it's just crazy because looking back at that, I feel like that's just ridiculous. Obviously, I wouldn't want to be anything else than like who I am already. But I don't know, it's like that I was just at that age where like I was also very young when I started developing. I think I was like around 9 when I started getting boobs for the first time, and I remember feeling like that was completely abnormal. I hated the fact that I was like curvy compared to other girls because in Asia everybody's petite. I had to start like shopping in like the women's sections a lot younger as well, and I don't know, and like I just didn't feel attractive whatsoever. And I think the fact that not even a single guy liked me the entire time that I was growing up in Hong Kong kind of like goes to show that I wasn't really the standard of beauty there. And it definitely made me feel that way because I think that, I don't know, even in Tokyo, like as a kid, I would have like guys have crushes on me and I'd be like, ooh, and I'd have crushes on guys and that would be normal. But I think in Hong Kong, like there was never an instance, like literally never an instance where guys were interested in me. And then all my other friends went through periods where guys were interested in them or they had boyfriends and stuff like that. And I just never experienced that. And I feel like because of that, now I feel slightly stunted in that aspect of life for some reason. But I think that it's just, I just never felt pretty. And I don't think I had any positive experience until I was around 16, where like the standard of beauty all of a sudden was to have a big butt, was to have a slim waist, was to look like an hourglass. But before then, I was definitely not the standard of beauty. I was considered thick and not in the good way, you know? So I think until I was 16 is when I started to actually feel like attractive, and that kind of manifested more through like, I would say experimenting in terms of hookups and stuff, but I never had like a relationship. I've never had someone genuinely like me or tell me that they like me for more than just how you look, I would say. And so I think because of that, that definitely like, again, like took a toll on my confidence. But I think from where I've come from then until now, I think I realized that my worth was just so much more than just how people around me want to treat it in some ways. And I think like that's kind of when I started to learn more about like self-love, self-growth and all that stuff. And I think definitely coming to the UK as well and seeing how much more diverse it was compared to Hong Kong definitely made me feel a lot nicer, and I definitely had more confidence as well because I think I was definitely deemed more attractive there than I was in Hong Kong. But
Completely agree. Like I think when I left, I went to boarding school when I was like in year 9, and like the school I went to had like so much diversity. It had people coming like from all around the world, and I got into like a really good friendship group, and just seeing like-minded people, just people of color from everywhere. My confidence grew as well, like so much. I just started to feel like so much more comfortable in myself, and I completely agree. I think it's just who you're around when you're young and you're growing up. You just need that kind of reassurance. So I completely get what you mean. So I even remember when I left primary school and I went to secondary school, like the first school I went to, people would be like, "Oh, like you act so white."
that
I
was
don't know if
such
it's because of the way I spoke.
Yeah.
100%.
And I used to think like, hey, my skin is black, my parents are black. Like I don't understand. Like I'm black. I don't
What does that
understand. Like
even mean? Like, what does it mean? Because it's just racist on its own, in my opinion. Because I remember the first time, like, someone called me an Oreo. I was like 14 or 15, and I had no idea what that meant. I was like, "What's an Oreo? Like, what is an Oreo?" So I was like asking like people around me, like, "What does he mean? Like, what does that mean?" Because I had no clue. I was like, "I don't get it." And then I think it's like my brother who was there, and he told me like that's like black on the outside, white on the inside, and I was like, "What the f does that even mean? Like, what does that mean? Genuinely, like, it's like." What does acting black mean? What does acting white mean? Like, that's just so, I was like so taken aback because I'd never thought of it like that. And then I think from that experience on, I've had so many other experiences of people like, oh, you're not acting black, or like, oh, you should act more black, or oh, you're just like acting white. And I was like, well, if acting white is being educated and having interests that's not what the stereotypical black person is interested in, then like take your assumptions and go elsewhere with them, because I'm not interested in that. And I think there's definitely so many misconceptions as well. Like, I think there is one guy, and I'm just like never gonna get over this, who was like passing around sunscreen for like a walk that we were gonna do, and he was like, "Oh, Natalia doesn't need any sunscreen because like she's black." And I was like, "Bro, that's not how it works. Like, we can get cancer too, you know, we can get skin cancer. It's a thing. Like, yeah, it
yeah,
protects us
no,
from
I can.
like getting burnt, I guess, a lot more, but it doesn't mean we can't get burned. It doesn't mean that we can't get skin cancer. Like, it's just ridiculous to me, that assumption. And I got really pissed. And I just remember, like, I think the fact was that growing up in Hong Kong just made it that I couldn't voice out my opinion about like certain concerns that I had, because even if I didn't like it, everybody else around me was normalizing it and made it seem like it was completely normal, or that I was overreacting for getting pissed about it because I was the only person defending my blackness in some ways, or defending black people in general, because there was no one else there to do it for me. There was no one else to be like, "Oh, well, this is not normal." And I think a lot of the people definitely didn't see issue with it because of the fact that everybody was staying quiet about it. And there's so many instances where they said, like, people said things that were completely just blatantly racist that you would just never say outright to any other black person. But I think because it's Natalia, that they felt they could say what they wanted and it was okay. And I think that I let that slide for so long, and it just pisses me off now that I let it slide for that long as well, because I think my stance was that I didn't even want to deal with it, you know, like I didn't want to deal with them. And I think the only reason I felt like they were doing it was to get a reaction out of me. And at first I was giving it to them, but then I was like, I just can't be bothered to give it. But then for them, in their minds, it was like, oh, well, this is normal. And the second that one person thought it was normal, everybody else around assumed that it would be normal as well. And I think that that's
Yeah.
where the biggest problem was growing up in Hong Kong. I just didn't feel represented, understood as well. Like, just nobody really understood why certain things were an issue or why certain topics weren't right. And I think that whenever I did voice my opinion about any issue that I felt, or any like insecurity that I felt because of this issue, it would kind of just be like, oh, well, like, you're only half black or you're only mixed, as if like that kind of disqualifies altogether my experience of feeling inadequate or of feeling a certain way. Like, yes, I understand that people who are fully black or much darker have probably a lot worse experience if they were to grow up in Hong Kong. I get that, but that doesn't completely disqualify my experience. And I think the fact that it was easy for them to just be like, oh, well, you're mixed, it only offends half of you, like, that doesn't make sense. Like, it just doesn't. And so I think that aspect of it just really pisses me off, because it's like the second that it was convenient for them I was mixed, but then when they were insulting me I was Black. You know what I mean? So I think that kind of made me grow up with this aspect of me personally feeling that the world saw me only as Black and not so much as mixed. And I think going to Loughborough changed that a little bit for me, for sure. I definitely felt a lot more mixed and a lot less fully Black, I would say, because I'm not fully Black, which is like understandable. But I think in Hong Kong, I did not have that same impression.
Yeah. Jeez. Makes me think like, gosh, if that happened to you, like, goodness gracious, I can't even imagine what it was like
No,
living
yeah,
there.
me neither, because you just don't see that many fully Black people. I think I was genuinely the darkest person, or at least girl, because there were definitely some Black men, and usually that was in the French section because I was in international section by then. And you see a lot of different other ethnicities, like you see a lot of white people, obviously a lot of French people, a lot of people from the UK, a lot of Asian people as well, whether that's from Hong Kong or China or even like India, Pakistan, all that places, or like all those kind of places. But you definitely did not see a lot of Black people. And I think the Black people that you did see were never people that I was close to or people that I was in proximity to. So I think
Yeah.
that was my experience altogether. But in terms of like going out partying and friends, what would you say were your experiences?
Well, I mean, I feel like going out here in Sweden is a totally different experience, or I had a totally different experience going out here in Sweden than I had going out in Canada. And obviously, I went out here for the first time. And then, like, as you said before, like living in Hong Kong, like, you never felt that, like, because you weren't the standard of beauty there that, like, people were looking for. Like, it was the same here. Like, people never looked at me the way that they looked at my friends who are all white, right? Like, they would always be like, oh, yeah, but yeah, like, you're not my type. But it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you know? And it was like that all the time. But as soon as I got to Canada, it was like a totally different thing. I felt like people were way more open there just because you see like people who look different everywhere you go. Like it's absolutely insane, especially in Toronto. It's such a big city and stuff. But here, there was definitely no diversity when going out. And also when you go out and like people have a little bit of liquid courage in them, they feel the need, like they can say anything they want without it being offensive or anything. So I got to hear a lot of that as well when I was out. People just saying, or people even like pulling like high key racist jokes and just be like, oh, but you understand, right? You know, I'm just joking, you know?
Yeah, a lot of
And I
people do
was
that.
like, what the fuck? Like, literally, like, why are you saying this to me? Like, it doesn't make it okay just because you're joking and you're drunk. Like,
I
that's
feel
so
like for
weird.
me, I had to, my way of like not having people criticize in some ways how Black I was by learning all the rap songs that you would learn in the club, you know, so that people couldn't say anything about you not knowing the songs. Or even just, I think a lot of the attention I got when I was in Hong Kong was primarily from Black men, actually, rather than anybody else. And so, and usually not that young, usually like very old Black men. And I'd just be like,
Oh,
no,
oh,
you know what I mean? It's just uncomfortable,
yeah,
right? And I don't know.
yeah.
And the only instances where I felt like people were interested, it wasn't like they were interested, it's just that they wanted to like get with you, and then that was pretty much it. There was never like any interest for anything further than that. And I think because I definitely didn't have an issue like just learning as well, because I was like, I'm 16, like I'm learning like what it is to be interested in people and stuff like that. And I think I never had any like full on interest go further than just literally just like a makeout, and that was pretty much it usually. So I think that going out, yeah, I don't know. But then there's also a very big difference between going out for us and then having house parties, because house parties were a lot less focused on hookups, I would say, because people, I don't know, the way I see it is that the group of friends, or at least the graduating year that we had, I don't know, it feels so weird to think of people that you grew up with for like so many years getting with each other. So it was a lot less hookup types like during house parties. But I think during nights out, especially like after our IGCSEs, that was mostly when people were going out the most. Yeah, we didn't have that much time in IB. We did it, but we didn't have as much time, I would say. But that was kind of like my experience. And in terms of friends, I would say like overall I had great friends. Like I think that in terms of being Black, I couldn't get the support that I would have wanted just because they're not Black, they're not going to understand, and I never fully felt, I guess, comfortable sharing every single thing I had in mind, just because of the fact that you learn to think that you're overreacting if you complain about something. So I never fully voiced out a lot of opinions that I had about, Zoom just cut us off real quick, so I forgot what I was saying. But in terms of like your experiences with your friends, like how did you guys feel in terms of that? Because I had mostly white or Asian friends mainly. No real, yeah, I didn't really have Black friends.
Yeah, at primary school, I didn't really have any Black friends because obviously there weren't really many Black people. But when I got into secondary school, I made like a bunch of like really close Black girlfriends, basically, that I'm still really good friends with now. And I think they were literally the ones who properly, like, I don't know, just like got me into the culture, which sounds so weird, I know, but I didn't have that at primary school. So when I got into like secondary school and actually started like mixing with them, it was just so great, just like kind of like yeah, talking about the culture and like, like your parents, like I feel like Black parents are really pretty similar. So just like joking around about like what our parents do, and like food and just like music. I think like just having that friendship group is just like really, really great. And yeah.
Yeah, no. I feel like my friends were pretty, I mean, I feel like I was in a pretty similar situation as you, Natalia, because everybody that I've gotten to know here in Sweden, most of them are white. I didn't really have any close Black friends when I was younger. I've definitely gotten to know more people now, like after living in Toronto for a bit, getting to know you guys. But overall, I don't really have a lot of Black friends. So the majority of my friends haven't really been able to understand like what I go through or like really know how it feels like, if that makes sense. But they've tried to be pretty understanding, and I've had to have like a lot of tough conversations with them. But besides from that, like that's pretty much how it's been most of my life. Talking about friends, I guess I
No,
would
I get
say.
you. I think with Black Lives Matter for sure, that's definitely engaged me to have more discussions about it. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that next week. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That was mostly my experience as well. In terms of like your households, what would you guys say? I think for me, we didn't talk about it as much, I would say, just because I didn't talk about it. Therefore, my parents never felt like they needed to have a discussion about it with me. I think in the last 2, 3 years, we started having a few conversations, mostly because my brother would say a few things and then I would disagree and tell him, well, that's not what I experienced, for instance. And I don't know, I feel like I guess his experience is a lot different to mine. I don't know if that's just because of a confidence thing and so I let more things slip by or something. I don't know, but I think we didn't have so many discussions at home, I would say, or at least discussions that I felt helped me in terms of confidence and stuff like that, especially when I was going through like the worst time of like my confidence, I would say. But what about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like we were pretty the same. We didn't really have that many conversations about it, but also, like, me and my brother can argue a lot. And I feel like my mom would definitely take it up more than my dad. My dad's white, by the way, and my mom's Black.
Yeah, same here. A lot more of my mom than my dad as well, I agree.
Yeah, because also, like, my dad, like, he will never understand the way that, like, I do, or, like, my brother, or, like, my mom. So, like, it's also been, like, we've also been in those situations where we've kind of had to have, like, some conversations with him as well. Um, I don't know if that's just, like, a us thing, or if that's, like, a very common, like, mixed family kind of thing. But, yeah, those are the conversations that we've had at home in my household.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my family are pretty open about it, like because it feels like it crops up in the news quite a bit. So we have like these discussions, and I think my mum's been really good on me and my sister just like encouraging us and just like yeah. So she's been really good on like encouraging us and having these discussions. and yeah, like just building our confidence and like telling us that we can basically do anything that we want to do. She's been really like strict and enforcing that, and like strict and enforcing about like education, and making the most of the opportunities that we have, because obviously, like my mum and my parents didn't have that, and her grandparents didn't have that, and her great grandparents like didn't that. So just like really making sure we make the most of every opportunity that we have, because she just tells us like what it was like for her growing up, and kind of like the racism that she experienced, and obviously the racism that my grandparents experienced. So yeah, just really making the most of the opportunities that we have, because I think we're like second generation. Yeah, because my grandparents came over in the Windrush. So yeah, literally, we have these discussions like quite often. It's a lot more now because of the whole like Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah,
To be very open about it. I think these like we're open about it because it's literally our life. Because obviously we're Black, so these things affect us. So we have these discussions because it is our life.
yeah, I think
Then
for me, I tend to have these discussions more with my friends, I would say, than with my parents, because I'm just the type of person in general who communicates more to my friends about everything rather than like
Oh yeah.
I definitely talk to my parents about stuff, I think, but I feel more comfortable talking about it with my friends first, I guess. I don't know. But I think in the same way that you just said about education and stuff, I think for us as well, we've definitely had that kind of like, yeah, the expectation to do well in school and stuff like that. Not so much
Yeah.
an expectation to be excellent, I would say. I mean, that's my own personal expectation, I guess. Like I put that on myself, but I think my parents definitely indicated to us that we had to have an education and stuff. And I think for me, part of it was feeling like I had to accomplish as much as possible and be better than everyone else, but not, I don't know. I tried my best at what I could, if that makes sense. But I didn't feel like I had to be better because of the fact that I was Black. I just felt like I had to be better because if I wanted to achieve the lifestyle or job that I wanted to get, I would have to be great, I would say, at least at, what I'm doing in order to get to like the schools I need to do and stuff like that. So I think it was
Oh
kind of
my gosh.
like trying
yeah,
to be better for yourself, because I felt like, especially
Yeah.
being young, my confidence was kind of like meh. So I would say like I really wanted to try to get, at least good grades and stuff like that. And the thing is that in Hong Kong, everybody's so competitive and everybody gets excellent grades and everybody has to compare grades all the time. Like I think it's a very different like aspect than in any other, I don't know, in any other city or country or anything like that, because I think that there's so much of an aspect of you have to be excellent. And even now looking back at it, I don't feel like I was excellent, even though like I think in terms of grades and stuff like that, I probably got really, really good grades compared to like other places and stuff like that. But I think because people were getting literally almost perfect scores, I felt like I wasn't competing so much with the people getting perfect scores, but that I wasn't terrible. I wasn't getting terrible scores. I was just kind of like above average, I would say. I was above average, and so I was always trying to achieve to be better because I'm competitive like that. But other than that, I think,
I was gonna say I do feel like as women of color, though, you do have to work harder just to like get in the room and get like your foot through the door in terms of like opportunities and things like that.
yeah. And even in terms of like voicing your opinion, because I definitely felt there were times where I had to shout a little louder for people to really listen to stuff I was saying. So I agree on that point. I think I've learned to be a lot more like voice
Assertive.
to speak more about, or like voice out my opinion more, and in a way that gets people to get
Yeah.
my attention. Otherwise, I don't feel heard. I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I completely agree. Yeah. And I also agree with the fact that like when racial things happen, even though we have these discussions at home, I do tend to just talk to my friends about it a lot more. Because I do talk to them a lot more in general.
Yeah.
Exactly. First point of call.
Yeah.
No, I completely get that, because also like I have a older half sister. Like I think there's like 16 years between us.
Oh wow.
But she's like on my mom's side, so she's lived in Canada all her life basically. And like she'll have a lot of those discussions with me and like encourage me. The same with my mom. I have a pretty close relationship with my mom. And like they'll both encourage me to like really like get my voice out there, like really do the best that I can, and like that it's important and stuff. So I feel like I've learned like a lot of those skills that I have definitely come from them, which I feel like is pretty encouraging for me like at home. Okay, so just to round off, or what do you say, like to wind up the episode, next week we are going to be talking about the Black Lives Matter movement and how we feel as Black people going through this during this time, and like its effects on us and like the Black community as a whole. So stay tuned for that next week.
Thank you for listening, guys.
Bye.
Bye.